Welcome to episode 8 of the Viking Voices podcast. I'm joined here today by Miss Shannon Hone of the Registrar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got that right. And
Yep.
I'd always, it's always, my responsibility to be factually accurate. And whenever I get on the podcast and I kind of forget to ask what position you're in, I always just kind of wing it and hope I get it right. But Shannon, thank you for being on the podcast with me this morning.
Yeah. Hey, Jaden, thank you so much for having me on here. And I just want to say that this is super cool that you do this and you host this, because there is so much that goes into a podcast, and I don't think people really think about it when they listen to them. But I mean, you've got to figure out who you're going to have. You have to pretty much do background checks on those people, learn your stuff on them. And then on top of it, you have to do like this whole production value. So kudos to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. The studio, it may look pretty easy behind, you just see the background, but behind the camera, we got a producer and about 16 million different buttons and cords that do different things.
Yeah.
But Shannon, let's start easy.
Sure.
I know you very well through, you kind of send me home for Christmas and Thanksgiving. You make sure I get over the border legally.
Mm-hmm.
So just tell the people what you do on campus and your role here with the school.
Sure. So just kind of my background. So I grew up out in the country, right outside Valley City. I'm currently the registrar at VCSU, and so I think a lot of times people get confused about what is a registrar. That means people think, oh, well, you register people. Registrars are actually people who keep records, and so that's anything from grades to schedules to the school's policies, any documentation. And so where our paths crossed were obviously as an international student joining us from Alberta, Canada. I work with the international students on all of their documentation, making sure that you're here studying legally so you don't get in trouble with Department of Homeland Security, but also, helping you navigate coming to a new country. I mean, that is no small feat. And I know for you, you're like, it's just Canada. But there's a lot of work that goes into it in order to come to the United States and study. And so I personally enjoy working with those students because usually they have a little bit more ambition, a little bit more energy, because they've had to go through those hoops before in order to even get here. So the high achievers. Yep.
Yeah, no, I remember, getting ready to go to a different country for school, and it's like, well, you need this form, and this one pops up late in the process. Well, you didn't do this one right. And it's like, how many? I'm only, 16 hours away. Like, come on, give me a break.
A whole different world. No, and I mean, I guess that's a question that I have for you, and we've never really talked about it, but I mean, you're from St. Albert in.
You got that right.
Yes.
Yes.
In Alberta, and that's about 10 times larger than Valley City. And so my question for you is, how was it adjusting to that? Adjusting to not only moving to a different country, but moving to a town that much smaller. And on top of it, you did it during the first semester that we opened back up after COVID lockdown.
Yes.
How was that?
Well, first off, I want to preface that by saying this is the first question I've been asked. So
really,
this is new territory for me. I almost want to switch seats with you.
Pressure's on.
Exactly. No, well, it's interesting. St. Albert, obviously, it's about 10 times larger, and then right beside it is Edmonton, which is about 1 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly an adjustment. You scale it down 10 times, and the thing I realize the most is the amount of people you connect with right away.
Yeah.
And you live on campus, obviously. So it's a little bit easier. Like there's all those students in the dorms, playing sports.
It's kind of like a community.
That's right.
Within
that's right.
the community.
That's actually a really good way to say it because, the dorms are kind of their own, almost like apartment complexes or like a gated community almost.
Yep.
But no, I think the biggest thing I noticed is just, it's honestly, the community feel. It doesn't take as long to get from point A to point B here.
It's true. Yeah.
But I've liked the small town. I like how you see a lot of people that just around the town, and I think the biggest adjustment for me would have been, well, not really necessarily an adjustment, but the biggest thing for me was I'm seeing people all around, twice, 3 times a day that I
Yep.
am not.
You have to come up with multiple ways to say hello throughout the day.
Exactly.
Hey.
Yep. Exactly.
Hello.
But yeah.
Jimbo.
Yep.
Like
Yeah. No, it was interesting for sure, and I know, Alberta compared to like a place like North Dakota, a lot more small towns in North Dakota. Alberta, 2 cities, over 1.5 million people. So
yeah.
it's certainly a different region. But yeah, I've loved it here.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to your background where you grew up a little bit.
Yep.
Where did you graduate from? Were you VCSU graduate?
So first of all, is that your only question?
And what was your degree?
Okay. Because my life has not been linear, and that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
By any means. But that being said, I have 3 college degrees that are vastly different from each other. And so I'll kind of lead you down this path, the long story. But initially, VCSU came into my life when I was still in elementary school, when we would take field trips to the planetarium, or because we're in North Dakota and there's 9 months of winter, we'd go to the indoor pool, which you probably don't know this.
In the basement.
But that was in the basement of the
Yes.
student center. Yes.
I heard about it.
Yes, and it was like competition size pool, like diving boards and everything. So between that and going to the library, and so it was a part of my life growing up. And then in middle school, I actually started to take music lessons over at Foss Music Hall,
Which is also, well, no, the pool, does it still exist?
The pool, I mean, it's down there.
Right, okay.
But it's not functional.
Right, but the Foss does not exist.
But Foss Music Hall, yes. So that was demolished, and then that was, the Center for Fine Arts incorporated that. But yeah, I started taking music lessons over there in middle school, and then in high school, I started to play with the VCSU orchestra. And so I grew up with kind of a modest background, and so I'm a first-generation college student. My parents said, we can't contribute to you going to college, but despite that, I was extremely fortunate because they really instilled in me the importance of a college education. And so I knew that I was going to do it by myself, but I knew I was going to do it. And so in high school, I started to get a head start and started to come down to the college and actually take classes. And that's the thing, is when you're going to Valley City High School, you've got a state university 5-6 blocks down the road.
That's right.
Right? It's crazy to not take that opportunity and start to get ahead. And then after that, I moved to Minneapolis for about 10 years, got 2 degrees in music and communications. And I don't know how much you know about Minneapolis, but Twin Cities is a very thriving community for art and music, right? We're talking about Prince and Bob Dylan and Lizzo. And so through that, I had great experiences working for an indie record label, a booking agency, worked at the Minnesota Orchestra, actually worked at the School of Rock. Yes, I'm serious, School of Rock. And then, I worked at a college as adjunct faculty and as an admissions counselor, and it was IPR College for the Arts.
Okay.
Outside of music, I then taught painting classes, and I was one of those people that would paint on stage with a live band. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. You've never seen that before?
No.
Okay, see? You got to get out a little bit.
I didn't even know, this is, right now blowing my mind right now.
I know. So that being said, Minnesota is really big for arts and music, but it's also like a naturalist's dream come true, right? You've got the Boundary Waters, you've got Lake Superior. It's the land of 10,000 lakes. And so growing up in the country, but then also being surrounded by Minnesota nature, I really came to appreciate animals and wildlife. And so I thought to myself, let's go back to school again. And this time I wanted to do biology because I really was interested in conservation. And so at that time I looked at the U of M Twin Cities, and they're an amazing school, R1 Research University. That's the highest level of research university you can go to. But when I thought about life, I already had debt from 2 previous degrees. Because I had previous degrees, I couldn't get federal grants anymore. Living in the Twin Cities, cost of living is higher.
Very high.
So I was thinking to myself, and I don't want to be one of those students that picks away and picks away and picks away. I wanted to get in and get out into the field and actually start working. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to work full time. So I was like, I got to drop down to part-time work. Well, that's not going to be able to afford U of M tuition, cost of living in Minnesota, and keep paying all my other college loans. So I just out of curiosity, I just kind of threw it out there to my old school VCSU, and I was like, how long would it take me? How much would it cost? Came back, it would take me 3 semesters if I was full-time, and it would take me half as much tuition as the U of M. And so at that point, I had to make a really fiscally responsible decision, and that was VCSU. And so that's what brought me back from Minneapolis. Long story.
But it's a great story because I didn't know that about you at all, and I did not know you had 3 degrees, and I don't know if we ever got into you living in Minneapolis when we met. I don't think we would have.
Probably not. Usually when we meet, we're focusing on you.
That's true.
But yeah.
But that if I could go back, because I want to, because you said a lot about the arts.
Yep.
Record label, working for a record label.
Yes.
Would you mind talking about that? Is something that is incredibly cool, and I actually have a cousin who works in the music industry right now, and I would love to know kind of what your story is.
How does your cousin like it?
He likes it a lot. I saw him, I think it was a year ago, and he was working. He works with rappers more so. So
Sure.
Who were you? If I'm allowed to ask, who were you working with, and kind of what was that experience like for you?
So I don't know if your cousin is familiar with Rhymesayers at all, but they are like the hip hop label in Minneapolis, and so. Regardless, I was working for a record label that at the time it was called Eclectone. It no longer is, but what their primary focus was indie folk pop rock kind of music. And so if you're thinking like a Bon Iver type of artist. And so what I primarily did was all the graphic design for that company. So all the album designs, all the one-sheet flyers that go out to press, all the posters for the concerts, like that type of imagery stuff. And yeah, I mean, that allotted me fantastic opportunities to travel around the country. Especially as a booking agent, you're booking the tours for bands. Now, as sexy as that all sounds, there is also the frustration of when you're dealing with young musicians, they can be flaky, they can be flighty, and your income is dependent on them following through.
That's right.
And so it can be frustrating, and there's not a lot of stability there. And so that's kind of why I got away from it, and I moved into education with music. It's just because I wanted more stability in my life than the record label and the booking agency could provide me.
I like that. I like that segue of, you talk about that. It's a very, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's a lifestyle that a lot of people would want, the record labels or like in professional sports even. But that's an interesting, you say that it's dependent on how willing the artists are to work to continue to, produce content and, want to go travel the country. Do you have any favorite destinations you were able to go to with that job?
For that job, probably was the South by Southwest Music Festival down in Austin, Texas. When I went, it truly was music for music's sake. They were starting to dabble in the film festival side of it, but now it's just exploded where it's music and it's film and it's technology and it's sustainability and it's like all these multifaceted things. But it was a really cool experience because essentially all of downtown Austin just shuts down. Everything becomes a venue, and it's people who have 5 fans, and it's also, millions and millions of fans for artists. So you get the entire spectrum. It's like the whole industry goes down there. So very cool opportunity to meet people, but also it's in March, which is a great respite from the North and the Midwest.
Yes.
So, big incentive there. But also Pacific Northwest. Very cool region of our country, but that was kind of that main demographic. It was kind of the post grunge scene, like post 90s, and so I loved that genre, and kind of enjoyed that lifestyle out there where everything was a little bit more mellow. But yeah, I mean, a lot of great experiences, but I wouldn't go back to it. It was
To
good.
the Pacific Northwest? Or?
No, to working in the music industry.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was good for my 20s.
Right.
It's a young person's game.
Right.
But I wouldn't want to go back and continue doing it.
Gotcha. I agree with you on the Pacific Northwest, though. Very underrated part of the country. I love Washington, and if Idaho counts, Idaho, underrated state. Very underrated state,
Okay.
at least in my opinion. That's really interesting. I never knew that about you. Never knew the record label. Never knew Minneapolis. So you come back to VCSU. You get your third degree.
Yep.
And now you start working for the university. So what job titles? I guess take us from the degree to kind of where you're at now as the registrar.
Sure. So again, like I said, my life isn't linear. That's how you go from being a biologist to a registrar. Essentially, when I started earning my degree here, I became an undergraduate researcher at the school. And so I did like remediation for environmental contaminants. And so like the best way I can describe that is, let's say there's a mercury spill. If you plant a bunch of cover crops on it, those crops absorb, just like they absorb water, they absorb toxins. And then you cut the little plants off and you throw your toxin away. So you're just removing toxins from contamination spills. Also, though, more to like the wildlife side, it was like non-game fish. I did fruit fly genetics.
Oh.
Yep. So I had, and of course they breed like
Oh,
that.
if
So
you
I
have
had-
one fruit fly in your house,
You
there's
do.
60 others.
Exactly. But working on their genetics, water quality, and then working on macroinvertebrates. Do you know what a macroinvertebrate is?
Could not tell you.
Okay, so when you go, let's say you go fishing, okay, and there's all these little snails and all these little aquatic things that are floating on the surface, those are macroinvertebrates.
Okay.
So sampling them, trying to figure out how many are in different bodies of water. But after that, I graduated and I worked for several agencies for the government, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife, USGS, worked for a few universities like NDSU, SDSU, and so I had great experiences working with like greater sage grouse. Those are like the ones with the big balloons on their chest. I don't know if you've ever seen those.
Maybe.
Okay. Swift fox, which is just a really cool species of fox. Pollinators, and then I even had an amazing life experience of going to Kenya and doing research on lions and the herbivores that they depend on. And so that being said, it's a lot of bebopping and scatting around. Again, not a lot of stability there. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm getting older. I'm in my late 20s. I can't keep crawling through the rivers and climbing over the barbed wired fences. Like at some point, I've got to figure out where is this going to go. And so just to get more stability in my life, I looked at my old alma mater and saw that there was a position open in the registrar office, and I applied for it and got it. But that being said, I wanted to keep utilizing that biology degree, right? I left everything behind, went and got a biology degree. I better keep using it. And so what I also do on the side is I work for a company that educates people on climate change. And so everything from city emissions to country net zero goals to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, all of that. And so it's a great thing because I was able to pivot from field research where you're out there actually doing the hands-on work to now I'm working with more of the data and the research side of it, which is more conducive to my current age.
Right.
But that being said, I'm going to turn it back on you again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Question number 2.
How did you get your job at VCSU?
This one right here.
This one right here.
Well, it's an interesting story. Well, I guess it's not. You know what? It's a story.
That's a really good setup.
No, it was kind of because of you. Because you as a full-time student, so I don't, the people who don't know, full-time student from a different country need 9 in-person credits. I think that's sounds right. Okay,
Yeah.
so what do I have? 6 for this semester. I had 6.
You did, yep.
So it was like, okay, if you don't do, like, you're not a full-time student, if you don't have 9 in-person credits. So I think it was you that suggested look for the internship. And then I think I was more sold on just like fill me up with a random class, like just because then
Sure.
and then I I kind of looked into it, and then there was this one that came up. It's with the radio station, but through VCSU. So I was like, okay, I suppose I'll apply for it, and see what happens. And then I got it, and then I was like, okay. I don't even think I was thinking internship at the time. I was just thinking, okay, here's a job. And then I was like, well, we talked about the internship. So then I came to you with it, and I said, okay, well, let's, do this. And so, yeah, it was kind of a combination of you kind of leading me in that direction for an on-campus, class. And then, combined with this, getting the job. And then I was just like putting the two together, and I was like, yeah, I could probably work an internship. And, this kind of relates to business, I guess. It doesn't everything relate to business, right?
I was going to say you're on a nonlinear path already.
Yes. Oh, big time.
So I guess my question is, though, because there were several student worker jobs, right? This wasn't just the only one.
Right.
So what made you specifically lean towards this one, and then what made you branch off and also do this podcast?
Yes, because the podcast was completely unplanned. It was... So I did some broadcasting last year for the school, for a couple of basketball games. There was a weekend of basketball. Did my time, whatever. Got, I think I got a shirt for doing it. Mark, I think he's behind the camera right now and he's laughing.
You got a shirt, holy cow, Mark!
I wear that shirt a lot though. Don't worry. I like that shirt, but no, it's fun, and that was the big thing. I wasn't worried about like. If you love it, you don't really care if, you get paid or not. But, and then I saw this come up, and it was like KOVC, and like the job duties were, work with the radio station on broadcasts and stuff like that. I'm like, I talk. Like, why not get paid to talk?
You do have the gift of gab.
Yeah.
You do.
I do. And so, if I was kind of like, yeah, I like to do this. I like sports. I like to commentate. I like that stuff. Watching sports growing up. I just recorded a podcast with Mark, and, we were talking about announcers and just like growing up, liking different announcers and, kind of getting into it and you trying to make your own style out of it. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to have this opportunity to do a whole semester of sports. And then essentially, I think it was, there were other duties to the job. We do the live streams for art. Performances and concerts at the CFA, and one day we were organizing the equipment in this room, and Mark was showing me around. He was showing me the ropes on because you see over there's a million, there's 4 monitors.
Yeah.
So and he's
it's a space station.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So. The lights make it look like it too.
Yeah.
But he was showing me the ropes, and then I think there was an episode. Of the Beyond the Bubble podcast on an SD card.
Okay.
And I was kind of half joking when I said it, but I'm like, why not like a campus-wide podcast? I could do it, whatever, right? And I was kind of half joking, and then Mark's like, he kind of nodded his head, and I was like, he's like, come with something, and we'll see if it. So I type it up and come up with something, and it looked good. And then I think the hardest part we ran into is naming it. Because we had a lot of names. Mark had the good ones. I had no good names. But we ran.
I'd like to hear some of those drafts of names. I bet they're.
I wonder if I still have the paper. But well, again, I might need to rely on Mark for this behind the camera. But I think there was the. Okay. Beneath the clock tower. Yes. Yes.
Somebody said that sounded like a horror film.
It does.
Horror podcast. No, there were a few. Mark really wanted to work the clock tower into it, and I agreed. I was like, yeah, because it was the face of the campus.
Yeah,
you think
the
clock
icon,
exactly.
Right?
So he's thinking clock tower, and then reason number 6.3 million to use AI generation generates a list of names for you. Not bad names. I think Viking Voices wasn't AI generated. I think that might have been one of the ones we came up with. But yeah, he floated a few names around, and then Viking Voices was succinct, and I liked the way it sounded, and we made a little logo for it. And
one thing that you still need to work on.
Okay.
If you're taking advice at this point,
always
you need to come up with a signature line, a sign off.
You're right.
I know.
You're right. We talk about announcers. and them having their signature style, you're right. I do
Yeah,
need
see?
a line. Would you like to help me with that right now?
I mean, let me say this: if
Okay.
it organically, if we get a really good one organically in the conversation,
Okay.
if something hits you,
Okay.
I'll let you use it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Without royalties.
Okay.
So,
Oh, all right.
okay.
You know something about royalties working for a record
little
label
bit.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you also said I couldn't work the fact that you had never had a sip of coffee organically into the conversation. And-
Kudos to you. Yes, it's true. I've never had a sip of coffee in my entire life.
And is that like just okay? You're gonna have to dive into that because I feel like everyone has tried it at some point, even people that don't like it.
Sure.
Why have you not, even invited the opportunity of
Invited the opportunity
for the coffee to
I mean, the way you word that. I would say the reason I haven't is because I have a feeling if I do, then I'll become dependent on it.
Yes, okay.
Once they got a hold of you, they got a hold of you.
Yes,
So
okay.
I'm not going to give in.
I can see that, and I feel like that's even more relevant with energy drinks. I feel like energy drinks and people that like that is there's a dependence on coffee, and then I think energy drinks just take it a step further.
That's 10 coffees
Yes.
in one.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few energy drinks where I've been like, yeah, but I stick to coffee and I take it black every time. So, but hey, to each their own. So, are you a tea drinker? What is your hot beverage of choice?
What is my guilty pleasure?
Yes.
So I have drank tea, not a lot. I primarily do water.
Okay.
I know it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Juices are how I really let loose.
Okay.
And if I really want to party hard, carbonated juices.
Okay. The carbonated sweet beverage industry, and I'm not talking about pop. I'm like the flavored water alternatives to pop have become increasingly more popular. I don't know if you've seen.
I started the trend.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
That was me.
So Nat, if you like juices, rank these three: orange juice, apple juice, cranberry juice. Those are 3 breakfast juices that you get at hotels.
Yeah, orange, I could drink it every day.
Okay.
I could drink it all day. Apple probably.
Okay, and cranberry?
And then cranberry, but all are fantastic.
Okay.
Bring all to the table.
Cranberry's too tart. It's a little too tart.
I mean, yeah, you have to like have a certain palate for it.
It's true.
Yes.
It's true. I've never
A refined palate.
craved. I don't know if you've pomegranate juice too. Very tart.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
I've never ever been like thirsty and been like I need pomegranate juice.
That's true. But it's very good for you, see. So
It's true. That is true.
That's why you should, young man.
Okay.
Yes.
I need to get some pomegranate juice after this, so I'll add that to the list. We have done a great job, and something that I think if you want to ask a question 2.5, something that I think I've gotten better at.
Yeah.
At this podcast is not allowing the script to dictate where we go, allowing kind of what we're talking about to dictate where we go. And
So is this I'm just wondering what this lead up is going to bring us to then.
I'm just saying that this script had no mention of pomegranate juice, and yet we got here. And I like this. This is probably the most off the board podcast I've done, but this is exactly how I like to do it.
That's what I'm here for.
That's exactly how I like to do it, is talk about what we're talking about. We don't need it. Hey, we don't need any of this to tell us what we're talking about.
No.
But I do want to bring up a story.
Okay.
Because this was funny. Sophomore year, what it would have been late August.
Okay. So we're talking like fall 22.
22.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm making my way down for my sophomore year, and took you do your check of all your stuff. For me, the big check before I leave home is passport, visa, because if I forget a shirt or a baseball glove, it can be mailed.
Right.
Passport. If I went to the border with no passport, you can imagine what would probably happen.
Well, yeah,
They'd send me right back.
You'd go
where I
back
came.
home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I checked the visa. I opened the visa, and there was a signature spot. And I looked, and there was 4 lines, and I was just reading it, and it said you need a new signature every, year?
Year.
Because you're the registrar. So, it was the day we're supposed to leave,
Of course.
and I don't have a signature to come down this year. So, I was panicking a little bit.
And what day of the week was this, though? Because that's an integral part to the story.
Do you remember what day of the week it was?
It was like a Sunday.
No way.
Yeah.
No, was it actually?
I think it was on the weekend. Yeah.
Okay, well I'm gonna fact check that after, because I'd have probably some pictures or documentation of
Sure.
my second, travel down to VCSU. But if it was a Sunday, I apologize for bothering you on your day off. So essentially, I think I called the office of the registrar,
Okay.
I think 3 or 4 times as I'm driving down
Yep.
in my car, hands-free, of course, not on my phone,
Oh, okay. Yep.
just for legal reasons.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to put that in there.
And I think it was 5 or 6 hours into the drive. I might have sent you a couple emails like, hey, I need this.
Because I think that's how I found out.
Yes.
Is because we weren't open, so I wasn't getting phone calls.
But I seem to remember you were in a meeting because that's why I couldn't get to you on the phone.
Okay.
That might have been why.
Okay.
But again, if I bothered you on a Sunday, then that's on me, 100%.
You know, it's those darn high maintenance international
Yeah,
students. What are you going to do with them?
I know it's ridiculous what we're putting you through. But I remember it was 5 or 6 hours in the drive. I was pulled over at a gas station, small town Saskatchewan. Small town Saskatchewan, almost smaller than North Dakota. Like this is another rural province. And you'd finally emailed me back and you said, okay, we're going to do this and this. It was, I guess, not by the book. I think I would still have the email, I'm sure. But you said this isn't traditionally by the book how we do it, but you got me a new visa with a fresh signature. So another hour or so down the road in Regina, Saskatchewan, I had to go to a Staples to print out my student visa about 2 hours before the border. And so I spent 50 or so cents. So the moral of that story is you saved my bacon a little bit that day because otherwise it would have been not so good at the border.
I think the moral of the story is, I was just doing my job. But what it really is that look at VCSU has taught you ingenuity and
Yes.
adversity.
Yes.
Look at you going to a
And
Kinko's.
to read the fine print
Yes.
because that was not good in that morning because it's a lot. It's an entire day drive. So you leave at 6:30, you get here at 10.
Yeah.
And 6:30 in the morning when you see you actually don't have the right documents to get over the border, and you're supposed to be there in 9 hours. Not good.
Yeah. And just the Department of Homeland Security knows we weren't doing anything shady.
Okay.
What it was at the time it was like it was kind of ending COVID, and so during COVID, because everybody was so segregated, they changed it that your designated school officials didn't need to physically sign your F1, your I-20. Because then we'd have to mail it to you, and that takes
Right.
X amount of days. And so at that time, they said you can digitally sign things. Okay.
Thank God.
And
for
so
COVID.
we were right. I know you lucked out. And so we were right on the cusp of when they were still like some border agents were like, I don't want to accept a digital, and others were like, it's fine. And so now it's become the standard because they're just like, let them through,
Right.
as with many things after COVID that changed. And so you were kind of on that cusp of, is a digital signature okay or is it not okay, depending on who you get
Right.
at the border. But it sounds like you got a good one. So
Yeah, I think I've had good luck at the border crossing in Saskatchewan. It's called Portal. It's kind of funny. A funny name.
yeah, it is.
Portal to the United States.
Port of entry called Portal.
Yes, I like that one. And, I think every year I go down there, they obviously have the records of me coming in past years. I think every year that I go down there, I let him through, whatever. Like,
Well, at this
he's
point,
fine.
because, you're getting to the end, you've been back and forth, back and forth, back and
Yes.
forth. They do get to know those students after so many years.
They're very friendly.
Uh-huh.
When you're not, if you're not doing anything, they're fine. Like,
If you don't look suspicious.
that's right. Like,
No, my favorite story, and I've probably told you this before, but when I was going to Winnipeg one time and I was crossing the border, the officer, he asked me, have you been anywhere? And I took pause because you obviously don't want to answer that incorrectly.
Yeah.
But who would say no?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I was in the kitchen this morning,
Yeah.
and then I got on the
it's
interstate,
a very
and like
weirdly open-ended
it
question.
really is. And I just said yes. And he's like, all right, keep it moving. And I
Yeah.
was like, what if I had said no? Like, what would have been the result of that? So
Yeah.
it was just one of those weird things. You never know what they're going to ask you. So
Well, when my dad, before I had a car, my sophomore year, I got a vehicle over the summer. So before that, didn't have a vehicle. So my parents drove me down the first year. And then obviously they come back, pick me up. And one of the border agents asked my dad, he said, you get what are you doing? Go sign up from school. Okay, what does he do there? He's like, oh, business major, and he plays baseball. So he asks, what position is he on the baseball team?
Very integral information for coming back into Canada.
But there's sometimes clever questions that it's like, yeah, like if you don't know what you're doing and like you're going over the border trying to do something that you shouldn't be doing, that might trip you up because, you think, what position? Of course, my dad's going to probably, it wouldn't be good if he didn't know what position I was playing for the school at the time. But yeah, that's, I feel like everyone has a good border story if you've crossed, or a customs story.
It's true.
Because it is definitely an interesting place where, the people watching is good. And, if you're on top of things, there's some of the questions you get.
It's never the same twice.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
Never the same twice. So.
Yeah. I remember in an airport, a customs officer thanked me because she's like, you're the first person that had your paperwork out all day. And I was like, it's 5 p.m. But maybe a tough shift. Let's move on to some fun questions.
Sure.
Because as much as probably everyone likes to talk about bureaucratic and documents,
Oh, I know.
They want to know.
It's a real barn burner of a conversation.
Big time.
Yeah.
But the people want to know who's one person you would have dinner with, dead or alive?
I would say probably one of my grandparents.
Okay.
And I say that just because my grandpa, he had passed away when I was 11, and so we were very close. He was kind of like a second parent to me at that point because my parents were working at night, and so after school I'd go over to my grandparents' house, and so just to be able to catch up with him and tell him like everything that I've been doing since I was 11.
Right.
I think that'd be really cool to share
would
that
be a good dinner.
experience. The other one too is my grandma, just because she got COVID in a nursing home and passed away, and so that was that weird time where you weren't allowed to like go visit, and so there was never really like a formal goodbye, and so it was kind of that situation. And so this is not to like garner sympathy, but it's just to say I think a lot of people respond to the question and name somebody who's really famous or who's a really well-known figure, and I think for me it would be more valuable to have more of a personal kind of private dinner,
right?
Than to try to come up with witty conversation with somebody who I admire who's got a status.
I like that answer. It's not an angle you necessarily see all the time, and I do really like that answer, and it segues me perfect into this next question.
Okay.
What your favorite restaurant in Valley City is that you would presumably go to dinner with them?
Well, first of all, can we back up?
Of course. Yes.
Who would you have dinner with?
Oh gosh. That's a great question. I would, off the top of my head, no thinking, I would say, my grandpa, he was my first grandparent to pass away. Yep. He was the baseball guy. And so never really got the chance to, talk shop with him about baseball. I was still very, very young. Can't remember exactly when. He might have been 6 or 7 when I passed away. So I still, wasn't quite playing ball at, a level where it's like, but now, oh my gosh, if he was able to come to, I'd even take it further and say if I could have one person come to my college game, 100% him. So, I like the way you answer that, and I would kind of take it the same way. So where are you taking them to dinner in Valley City?
Where am I taking my grandparents?
Yes.
So I'm a vegetarian, and so in Valley City you kind of have to get a little bit creative.
I was gonna say, here's a time to tell any vegetarians that may be watching the podcast.
So for a sit-down restaurant, I would probably say Bridges, just because all of their burgers you can actually get as a veggie burger.
With a veggie patty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If it was like just a kind of takeout delivery thing, I would actually say Jimmy's Pizza. And that's because there's so much variety. Yeah, you can get pizza, but you can get pasta, you can get calzones.
Gotcha.
You can get like all these different things delivered to you, and that's fantastic if you're having a lazy day.
I guess so. Yeah. I've never actually been to Jimmy's Pizza, believe it or not. Okay.
There you go.
Might have to keep that in the back of my mind.
Before you leave Valley City.
Okay. I will do that.
That's on your list.
I can make a promise.
Next time your parents are in town.
No signature until
That's right.
I'm not
letting
Jimmy's
you
Pizza.
leave. No, what's your favorite restaurant in town?
Oh man, I have to say right now it's El Valle Taco. That place is just, and that's been kind of the consensus answer on this podcast from who have asked. Unbelievable Mexican spot. But there really is no, Bridges, phenomenal. Kieran House,
Yeah.
phenomenal. Sabir's, phenomenal.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of good, and I don't know
in
if
case you're looking for any formal sponsors.
yeah,
Yes.
right.
I-
You're always open. Actually, I don't know if we're allowed to have a sponsor. The old Viking room too
Yeah.
was best breakfast I have ever had.
Well, and that's the thing now is where do you go
to get
to get breakfast? I know.
Sounds like we have a restaurant
I know.
coming up here because I thought it closed early my sophomore year,
Mhm.
and then they had that other restaurant across the street,
They did.
and they didn't have my favorite plate, the Vikinator,
Uh-huh.
and so it wasn't quite the same. Still delicious, but yeah, there's no place for a sit down, bacon and egg style
know.
breakfast.
I
So
know.
you know business opportunity for anybody. I don't have the money, so I can't do
You
that.
need to find an investor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So investors or partners, I'm willing to
There you go.
open up a breakfast place. So we talked a little bit about travel for the record label.
Yep.
But do you have a bucket list travel destination that you would like to hit?
So, in my life, I would like to be able to make it to all 7 continents. Okay.
I like that one.
So,
That's
I've
good.
been to Asia. I've been to Africa.
Okay.
I've been to Europe. Obviously, North America.
We are in it right now.
We are currently sitting
Yes.
in
So
North America.
check it off the box.
Next year, I'm going to go to South America.
Okay.
And that leaves me with Australia and the Antarctica.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Australia, I think, just as a wildlife biologist, that's like a dream come true.
Be a fun one for
And
sure.
marsupials are like a whole different thing that you don't find anywhere else in the world. I'm not going to lie, Antarctica, I think it would be amazing, and we should probably see it before it melts. But it is so cold.
Yes.
And when you're here, you get 9 months of cold.
Mm-hmm.
And so for your vacation, do you really want to go experience colder?
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of a harder sell for me, but I do think it would be a once in a lifetime experience,
Yes.
and not that many people go there. So
That's right. It's not thought of a lot, and
Yeah.
the 7 continents. You hear the people that have been to every country. The 7 continents, a lot of a more realistic
it
approach
is.
to that.
Yes.
Um,
It's more budget friendly.
absolutely. I'm definitely a 50 states guy. That'd be really cool.
Okay.
7 continents, so I'm gonna think about that because it's
Well,
very
how many
doable.
states have you been to?
Okay. You know what? I'm gonna do
You
this.
don't have this
I'm gonna
number saved on the top of your
Nope.
head?
I'm gonna pull up United States, and I'm gonna name every single one. I'm not gonna count airport layovers because that's cheating.
All right, fair enough.
Okay.
Even though technically.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
nah.
Okay.
So Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, so that's 11,
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, Arizona, Florida, California's 15,
Okay.
and I think Colorado's just been airport. Crazy, I've been to the Denver airport like 8-9 times. Never
You never
stepped foot
stepped out
outside.
of it. Yeah.
Same thing in Illinois, Chicago airport. Never
Sure.
stepped outside. So 15. So what's that? 15, 30. So almost a third.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty
Not doing
impressive for
bad.
not being an American.
That's right.
And number 2, at your age,
Yeah.
having that many knocked out already.
Yeah. So if
Has that just been due to baseball?
most yes. I spent a
Okay.
Thanksgiving in Montana. California was Disneyland when I was like 2 years old, so I
Sure.
don't actually remember
Okay.
California. But you could say I kind of got it back by going to the San Francisco airport. So no memories of the Disneyland trip, but San Francisco airport.
There's photographic
is one.
evidence
Yes.
that it occurred. You
Yes.
just don't remember.
I
it.
can place myself in California at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so I'm trying to think. There might have been one more, but I'll be down in Oklahoma this year for baseball, so that's 16.
Okay.
So now we're getting to a third of the way there.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you been more? I'm assuming you've been to more states than I have, probably.
I actually probably close to that.
Okay.
I know this is, and I don't mean this in a snobby way, but when I travel, I kind of like to go abroad.
Big time. Yes.
If you're going to do it, go big.
Yep. Well, I don't want to go to Saskatchewan for a vacation. Right? Okay, I need to get back to our script.
Manitoba's calling you.
Yeah. No, they're not. The Winnipeg airport calls me.
Okay, but where do you play baseball in the summer?
Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Okay, so it
Yeah,
is Alberta.
there is some
Okay.
Saskatchewan. We are on the Sask side because we're the one team that's kind of more east. So we are Sask side.
All right.
So we play in Saskatchewan a lot. There's some nice places though. You know what? I apologize, Saskatchewan. It's a nice place. I do like Saskatchewan.
That's right.
Saskatoon.
Back up, cover yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
I do like Saskatoon. I'm going to bring this up, kind of the last fun question, and then we're, this has been a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah.
And, we could talk here all day, but for content purposes and uploading to YouTube, we have to keep it around 45 to an hour, just
Yep.
the orders.
I get it.
So we were talking at one point that I was dressed up as an office character for Halloween one time.
Yes. Yeah.
And you immediately, we got into a bit of a talk about The Office.
A debate. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that is, I'm assuming, is your favorite show, or are there
Not
any?
even close.
Okay.
Not even close.
Then you gotta give us a few that you like.
I know The Office. I've watched The Office a couple times.
Okay.
I think a lot of people have the same sentiment that I do in regards to once the Michael Scott character left.
Yes.
It probably should have ended there. But that being said, I would say my favorite show is Seinfeld.
Oh my gosh.
And the
yes.
reason I say that is because all the storylines are things that, like, it's just everyday stuff.
Yes.
Right? And the joke is it's a show about nothing.
Yes.
Because it's just about life. And yet, no matter how oddball all of their stories are, by the end of the episode, because it's such good writing, it somehow all collides. And it's just interesting and also hilarious to see how it all comes together in the end.
I did not think I'd hear Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld.
Yeah, I'm a big 90s fan.
Yes.
So, something newer than that, though, and a branch off of it would be Curb Your Enthusiasm. And
Larry David,
yes,
though.
Larry
Kind of
David's HBO. And the
yes.
reason I say that is because all those trivial annoyances that happen throughout the day when you're out in society and you think, why, like, no one's saying anything? Is
Yeah.
no one else seeing this? And then Larry David wrote a show about all of them,
Yeah.
like the line budgers and the people that have no personal awareness on an airplane. And, like, he made a show about it and was like, yes, someone is finally seeing what I've been seeing all these years, and he's saying something about it.
Larry
and it's
David.
just done in his very cynical, sarcastic writing kind of way. And so, it's usually great for a laugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Larry David obviously also involved in Seinfeld. He's a writer for Seinfeld.
Yes.
So you
Yep.
like the Larry David pieces. So we're gonna finish up with one more question.
Sure.
Again, YouTube, background and
Uh-huh.
what's your favorite part been about working at VCSU?
So I know that it's going to sound very generalized, and I'm sure this answer has been echoed by many, but the students.
Mhm.
And the reason I say that is because anyone who's ever taught and then transitioned into administration, or who started in administration and then kind of started to work your way up into the hierarchy, deeper into it, the further you go into it, the more dissociated from the student body you become.
Mhm.
And yet, ironically, that's the reason that you first wanted to get into education, was to help students.
Mhm.
And so for me, my favorite part of the job is working with you guys, the international students, because you guys are such cockeyed optimists. It's a completely different energy working with the student body. You guys are, ambitious and driven. And if there was a way to bottle, like, whatever that kind of ambition and drive and energy that, like, Grant Larson and Tara Dahl and you have, if we could just bottle that, the world would be in such great shape. And the faculty and the admin here, we talk. We talk. And whenever you come up in a conversation, it's, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
No matter where you go and what you do, you're the type of person that you're going to do it well. And so that's the most rewarding, is working with that type of student. And so thank you for making my job better.
Thank you. And just for everyone's information, I do not pay for her to say that.
You
and I
didn't,
really
that's
appreciate
true.
it. If you did bottle up if I do and put it out in the world, there'd be a lot of podcasts. So I think that's the perfect way to leave it off. Shannon, thank you for being here this morning. Probably a little tough for a 9 a.m. start. I think our earliest start on the podcast, and obviously you have no coffee to drink, so you're doing this.
This is all natural.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Shannon, thank you for being here. And And yeah, it's been episode 8 of Viking Voices, and we say so long.